Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, I'm Laura, also known as the Knitwear on Instagram and TikTok. And today we're going to be talking about a topic I care deeply about, namely sustainability when knitting. We're going to be talking about a lot of different projects, so I would go grab a cup of coffee, tea, a snack, anything that you like to cozy up with on the couch, and let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about what sustainability in knitting actually means, how to choose eco-friendly yarn, certifications like GOTS, Ecotex, RWS, Bluesign, how difficult they are for brands to get, the real environmental impact of different fibers, and practical ways you can be more sustainable knitter without sacrificing your creativity. So let's get into some fiber science. Firstly, if you don't know me, I'm Laura. I'm a chemical engineering student who's obsessed with yarn fibers, everything knitting related actually. And I really enjoy making videos about science related topics in regards to knitting. And while you're here, I would love to know what you like about knitting. Are you coming from a science background, or are you just a vivid creative knitter? Let me know down below. So when we think sustainability, we often think that natural equals good and synthetic equals bad, but it's a bit more complex than that. I think sustainability in knitting can be broken down into 4 different pillars. So firstly, we have the pillar of environmental use, which means how much water the specific fiber uses when are grown, how much land you use to grow this fiber, the carbon footprint, the chemical input, and the biodiversity impact that this has. Secondly, we can talk about circularity. So this means how durable is the fiber, meaning that when you knit clothes with this fiber, can you use it for many years, or will it start pilling or break down quickly? Furthermore, we talk about compostability. So this is specifically for natural fibers. So how easy are they to compost in the environment, as well as recyclability. So are you able to recycle this product, and if so, how hard is it to recycle? Thirdly, when talking about sustainability, it's not only the environmental impact, but also the social impact, meaning that the workers that are farming these materials, are they getting the right pay, the right conditions? Are they safe conditions, or are they being exposed to a lot of harmful chemicals or a lot of very difficult work situations? And number 4, the longevity of the garment. So if you knit it and if you love it and if you're going to be wearing it for many years, it's sustainable. So today we're going to be looking at yarn sustainability through the lens of all of these 4 different pillars. So firstly, I thought we could start by talking about the different fibers and the environmental impact that they have in general. So this is just a thumb up rule. If you're using virgin wool or virgin polyester or virgin anything, meaning that it's the first time that this fabric or this yarn has been made, this is how much of an impact it has on the environment. There are a lot of different categories when talking about fibers, but I want to start about the one that is called natural fibers, meaning that they can be animal or plant-based fibers, but they are naturally made and not man-made. So let's talk about the one that everybody uses and is one of the most common types of yarns, namely cotton. So conventional cotton uses 2,700 liters of water per conventional t-shirt. Historically, there's been a heavy pesticide use when farming or growing cotton. However, it is decreasing now due to people becoming more mindful of the environment and sustainability in general. So you can get organic cotton, which drastically reduces the chemicals used to create the cotton. However, it takes up a lot more land for the farmers to create this type of cotton. So this is also something you have to take into consideration, that it does require a lot of land to be able to farm cotton. Secondly, we have wool. Wool is a natural fiber, so it's biodegradable and it's recyclable, which gives it a high sustainability and a very good circularity. But the environmental impacts of this vary depending on the different farmers and producers of the yarn. You can talk about, like with cows, the methane production of the sheep or by the sheep and how this impacts the environment. Also land degradation if the sheep are poorly managed or if the farms are not treating the animals right. It's not very sustainable either, but overall wool is a very sustainable fiber, and I highly recommend going for wool garments in general. Let's talk about another type of wool, namely alpaca, and this is one of my favorite fibers just because it's so freaking soft. Seen through an environmental lens, alpaca is more sustainable than sheep just because they have smaller feet actually. And this is something you can talk about like the actual environment that the sheep and the alpacas are in, but the alpacas are less damaging to the natural environment that they're in. Alpaca and sheep wool are actually antimicrobial, meaning that you don't have to wash them as often and thereby makes them more sustainable. So this is one of the most sustainable luxury fibers that you're able to buy. And now we can talk about some other natural fibers, which are plant fibers, and I characterize these as cellulose fibers. So this is something like tencel, lyocell, bamboo, or viscose. These fibers are usually made from wood pulp, which is one of the lowest value tree byproducts or tree materials that you can have. Lyocell and tencel uses a closed loop system, which means that 99% of the solvents, meaning the different chemicals that are used to create these materials, are recovered and then being able to be recycled, which means that it is actually a quite sustainable production. However, bamboo sounds sustainable, but it's actually not. It's not a closed loop system, meaning that there are used a lot of different chemicals to create this material, and it is not recovered, which means that you're going to be using a lot of CS2. I will put it in the screen up here so you can see what the chemical looks like, but it is not recovered and it's a toxic chemical, and therefore it is not sustainable. So I would recommend, if you like to do natural fibers, going for viscose, tencel, stuff like that. Linen, I highly recommend going for linen. If you want something that is natural, durable, has a nice stripe to it, go for linen. It doesn't require a lot of water, so it's a very durable material. So it is one of the most sustainable materials, and you're going to be having them for a long time. Now let's talk about the last category, and I swear to God, as a Danish person, I hate to pronounce this word, but it is the synthetic fibers, meaning the man-made fibers. So these are your acrylics, polyesters, nylons, stuff like that. So acrylic yarn is made from petrolatum, which is the petroleum chemicals that you also use for fossil fuels, which is not sustainable. It is a form of plastic, and it has a high carbon footprint. It actually has the carbon footprint 6 times that of wool's carbon footprint, which puts it a bit into perspective, especially since acrylic is one of the yarns that are synthetic made fibers to imitate that of wool fibers. So it is the best way to compare these two. Acrylics are non-biodegradable, which means that you have to be very considerate as to how you are getting rid of them, as well as they shed microplastics. So when you wash them in your washing machine, they will be shedding microplastics into the environment, which is not very sustainable either. From a sustainability perspective, I would avoid using this type of products, or unless you already have them in your stash, or unless it's a already recycled yarn. These have a 50% lower environmental impact than that of virgin acrylics or virgin polyesters. Then we have nylon. This is also a petroleum-based product, but it's extremely strong and durable, meaning that if you do knit with this fiber, you're going to be having your clothes for a very long time unless you're throwing them out, which is making them a bit more sustainable. Furthermore, you're able to find recycled nylon a lot, which is a great alternative to add to your alpaca yarn or wool yarn to make them a bit more durable and long lasting. So this is one of the bit more sustainable synthetic fiber alternatives. And lastly, I want to talk about polyester. Polyester has a very high durability as well. So you can get recycled polyester yarn, also known as recycled PET yarn, which is more sustainable. However, it also sheds microplastics, so I would avoid this. Okay, so now that we have talked a bit about the different types of fibers that are and their sustainability impact, I want to talk about the different certifications that yarns are able to get. So let's break down what they actually mean, because there's a lot of them. And some of them has a sustainability aspect, some of them doesn't at all. So let's talk about GOTS to the start. So GOTS means Global Organic Textile Standard, and is the best sustainability certification any yarn can get. GOTS covers that 95 to 100% of the fibers used are organic. There is no GMO, no harmful chemicals. Wastewater treatment after the production of the yarn is required, as well as proper working conditions for the ones that are working with this. This is both for the actual farmers as well as the creators of the yarn. So it's not only a certification that looks at the farming of the product or the production, it looks at the overall production chain. And it is a very hard certification to get. For companies to get this kind of certifications, they need full transparency of the production, and they're able to trace their products throughout the whole supply chain. There are yearly inspections, but it is a very costly certification. So for smaller companies, it is just out of reach just because of the economic impact that it will have. So if I want to put it short, it requires full traceability. So from the farm to the spinner to the dyer to the factory. So this is why small indie dyers don't usually have GOT certification, even though they might actually live up to the standard. Secondly, let's talk about the Ecotex 100 certification. The Ecotex 100 certification has nothing to do with sustainability at all. It is a certification for human health or how it's impacting human skin. So the Ecotex certification tests the final yarn from any harmful chemicals, and if it is below a certain point or like a certain determined value, it can get the Ecotex certification. And this certification ensures that the yarn is safe for your skin. What it does not cover is the environmental impact of the yarn, the worker welfare, or the farmer practices. So it's solely a human health certification. That are strict rules that the yarn needs to comply to. But it's way easier to get than GOTS. Now I want to talk about the last certification that I'm going to mention today, which is the B Corp. My puppy is down here. I'm sure you cannot see him, but he wants some attention. B Corp covers ethics and environmental impact. It's not a directly sustainability certification, but it is relevant to brands if you want it to be social sustainable as well. B Corp further looks at worker welfare as well as social responsibility. It is hard to obtain as it requires a full company audit. Okay, now I want to talk about the more practical side of this. If it's a bit loud, it's because my puppy is playing around me at the moment and trying to get something from under the table, I think. Yeah, but let's talk about something more practical, which is how to choose sustainable yarn. So these are the things that I will go for, or I will ask myself or look into if I'm buying a new type of yarn or if I'm out for buying new type of fibers. Firstly, I would prioritize natural fibers that are organic, so GOT certified, and especially if I'm buying cotton, which is harsh on the environment, I will look into buying GOT certified cotton. If I buy wool, I love to buy wool that is RWS certified, so I know it's responsibly sourced and that the worker welfare is up to date. And I want to make sure that the wool I'm buying is responsibly sourced. It can also be recycled wool. And you can aim to buy from low impact animals such as alpaca wool or mohair. Secondly, I would look for transparency from the yarn brands. So does the brand tell you where the fiber was sourced, how it was processed, whether animal welfare was monitored, or what chemicals were used in dyeing? If yes, it's usually a very good sign. Thirdly, I would just check the certifications on the back of the product. So do they have any certifications? And if yes, is it the certifications that you're looking for? If you have sensitive skin, you might want to look for Ecotex certifications. And if you want to make sure that your stuff is organic, you might want to look for GOTS. And furthermore, I would choose recycled fibers if possible. So I'm currently on a mission to test a lot of different recycled fibers or recycled yarns. And I've already tried quite a lot actually, and I have some more coming in the mail. So if you want to see a video on the different recycled fibers that I have acquired and my recommendations and my reviews of them, you can let me know down in the comments, and I would love to make that kind of a video for you. Furthermore, I would look into buying recycled acrylics, nylon, polyester if you want to use yarns like that. Number 5 is a bit harder for me too, but buy yarn intentionally and project by project. So avoid overbuying. Make sure you do some stash busting. So if you want to see a video on different patterns that you can use for stash busting or recommendations like that, you can let me know and I would be happy to make a video like that as well. Also, I would love to know what you do with your leftover scrap yarn. Have you made anything yet? Because I'm really looking for recommendations as well to try something new, and I know that there is a lot of nice patterns. And that being said, I want to do a shout out to 3 different knitwear designers that have a lot of different patterns that can be used for scrap yarn. I will link all of the 3 down below so you can go to their websites, but the 3 knitwear designers are Rose Knitwear, Spectakelstrick, which is a Danish knitwear designer that I highly recommend as well, and Lipol. She has such nice garments, and I swear all of her patterns are just spot on. It's actually like that for all 3 of them. whenever I go to their website. I get so inspired and I think they're gorgeous, gorgeous patterns. I would link them down below and I will put some of my favorite on the screen so you can just quickly see them and then you can find them down below. Sustainability is nice, but it is very expensive. It is expensive for the brands. It is very expensive to get all of the certifications that I mentioned, which is sometimes why some of the brands don't actually have the certifications. Furthermore, it's expensive for people to buy recycled or sustainable yarn as well, which is such a shame. But I've seen all of the sustainable or recycled or upcycled yarn being marketed as luxury yarns and that people have to pay a lot of money for it. I know that a lot of money goes into it because you have to be very considerate when creating the yarn, and you're probably going to spend more time and more money on the actual creation of the yarn. However, I think it's just such a shame that sustainability is not available for everyone and that it depends on your economic status. Okay, so to recap all of this, here's all of my sustainability practices that you can make as a knitter. Buy project by project, choose long-lasting fibers, repurpose yarn from old sweaters, wash knits less often, use a microplastic filter if you're washing synthetic fibers. And I just want to take a quick reminder to say that sustainability when knitting is not about being able to buy the perfect yarn or being able to do the best possible thing every time. Being sustainable is about making informed choices and trying to be a little bit better every time. Trying to be a little bit better when making your next purchase or not making a purchase even though you wanted to make it. If you found this video helpful, I would highly appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and if you subscribe to my channel. There are going to be a lot more videos coming out in the future about sustainability, and I actually have something exciting that I wanted to make a video about that will come out in a couple of days. And please share this with your fellow knitting nerds. I would love to create a community here on YouTube for all of the fiber art science nerds, people who want to know more about their yarn, their fibers, everything like that. And I would love to hear which sustainable practices that you do or that you would recommend to other people, so you can comment those down below. Thank you for watching and happy sustainable knitting!